Azushunamir, that is the name of the first non-binary hero ever, who has a story so tragic, it's so beautiful and so shockingly relevant to non-binary people today that this video is probably going to get banned in some places. Remember, the Epic of Gilgamesh from 2100 BCE, first story ever found and all that. Asushunamir's tale is from that time period, a story from ancient Babylon. And Azushunamir was a Sumerian god. Goddamn, I don't know. I don't know the title for a non-binary godly creation. Divine being? Divine being. Divine being. Azushunamir was a divine being that was created by the gods for one task and one task only. To be exact, Azushunamir was created by the god Enki, the god of wisdom, to free the goddess Inanna from the underworld. And if you're thinking, chill, breathe, hey, chill, can't be throwing names around like that. What do you think this is, Game of Thrones? You gotta ease us into this story, lube that thing up, like a doctor during a rectal probe when you thought he was just gonna check on your cough.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
And you know what? You're right. Since this is Sumerian mythology, which not many are familiar with, let me take you back to the basics. Sumerian, and by extension Akkadian mythology, is basically what every other mythology that followed was inspired for, or in the case of Greek mythology, flat out plagiarized. So that means that Zeus is actually just the Greek version of Enlil. Enlil is the Dawn Dada in Sumerian mythology. He was born from the union of heaven and earth, and ever since he separates the heaven from the earth to make the world habitable for humans. And because this is a precursor for Greek mythology, enter your mandatory incest right about now.
Yeah, boy.
Enlil then marries his mother, the earth, whose name is Ki, and they go at it POV mom style to create all plants and animals. But hey, before you judge the man, his father, the heaven, had since separated from the earth, Ki, to float around. So there was literally just Enlil and his lonely mom on earth, which... Why do I feel like I've seen that movie before? Anyway, Enlil also had a brother, Enki, the god of water that the Greeks later plagiarized into Poseidon, and after Enlil was done creating life with his mom, his brother said, bro, let me have a turn. And so that... Nah, man, that would be foul. Even for mythology standards, that would be foul. Enki kept it chill. He only slept with his sister, his daughter, and his granddaughter. But back to Dawn Dada Enlil. After he was done with mom, he seduced the goddess Ninlil, had a bunch of children with Ninlil, and one of those children later gave birth to Inanna, the aforementioned goddess of war, love, fertility, and sexuality, the corner piece of this story, who you might remember from the Epic of Gilgamesh because she features in a lot of Sumerian tales. I guess her being the goddess of war and sex just makes her a compelling character to write, and maybe you can use her as inspiration for your own stories, the ones you're going to create with my sponsor, AnimeShorts. Let's say you actually want to make a comic about Inanna becoming the goddess of war, right? You can use the app to write a script about what you want to see, and wait, let's actually do this. And see, now I write the script. Now I can pick an anime art style and a theme for the script for the character, and now when I click here, it should just, boom. I automatically have 4 panels that I can now customize to have a little comic page, which is already dope if that's all you want to do. But also with just another few clicks, I can even bring it to life. Voice, music, all that. Man, I'm just a fan of every tool that puts creativity in the hands of people and inspires creation, rather than the doom scrolling or other non-creative brain-dead activities that consume society these days. The more people that are out there creating by whatever means necessary, the better our world is for it. So get creative. Check out AnimeShorts via the link in my description and you get 30 free comic creations and 1 anime creation for free to see if you like it. And if you do, maybe you use it to tell the story of Inanna, the goddess of love, war, fertility, and sexuality. Inanna was mad in love with her lover and fellow god, Dumuzi. And if you're the lover of the goddess of war and sexuality, what's going down in the bedroom. Inanna and her lover, they went hard in the paint until Dumuzi died.
Oh.
Scholars still debate why he actually died. My personal theory is an asphyxiation fetish gone wrong, but no one will listen to me. I don't know why. The point is that Dumuzi ended up dead, and in the underworld, Inanna was heartbroken over his death. But it just so happened that the goddess of the underworld was Ereshkigal, her sister. So Inanna went to see her, traveled to the underworld to plead her sister to release her lover, but sister Ereshkigal wasn't happy to see her. Quite the opposite, actually. Inanna, thinking she can just show up in the underworld and disrupt the flow of life and death.
Unforgivable.
Inanna is already the goddess of life, fertility, while her sister Ereshkigal ruled over death and isolation. To Ereshkigal, to her sister's appearance, thinking she can bring back her dead lover, who is now property of the underworld, property of Ereshkigal, that was pure arrogance on Inanna's part and an insult to the goddess of the underworld. So Ereshkigal decided to show Inanna who's boss around these parts. When her sister begged her to release her lover, Ereshkigal smiled and told her that yes, Dumuzi, yes, you can return to the living, but there are rules to this.
You must lose that which you love. A soul for a soul.
And so she kept Inanna in the underworld, trapping her forever.
Forever, ever.
Do know that there is an alternative version of the myth where Inanna just goes to the underworld to conquer it, because she's the goddess of war, so it's kind of her thing. But when she gets to the underworld, her sister Ereshkigal is like, and Ereshkigal impales Inanna on a meat hook to keep her in the underworld forever at the end. I like the rescuing her lover drama more, so I went with that. But I'll talk about the differences between each version at the end. The point is that in all versions of all mythologies, Inanna ends up trapped in the underworld. That was problematic because since Inanna is the goddess of sex, fertility, and lust, it meant no man on earth could get a stiffy anymore. And all the ladies were rocking barren, dry wastelands down south, you know what I mean? No more sex, none, nada, like me in my early 20s.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
And that's trouble because sex is kind of what gives us life, and also it's incredibly fun, or so I've been told.
They ask you how you...
And since the gods love nothing more than to smash and mess with humans, they needed lust and fertility. And so the god Enki decided.
I'm bringing sexy back.
And Enki created the hero Asushunamir to bring Inanna back. Damn, I almost forgot that this video was about Asushunamir. Hey, don't blame me. He often gets left out of the tale. I'm genuinely working with very little here.
That's what she said.
I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video, but in some versions of the myth, Azushunamir, my guy, doesn't even have a name. I'm doing my best with this story because it's fascinating. Now, you might be wondering, why would the powerful Enki create a hero and not go himself? And if you're wondering that, you must not have been paying attention. There's rules to this.
A soul for a soul.
Going down there was a one-way ticket. Asushunamir was sent as a sacrifice. Except, you know how they sometimes say that beautiful people get away with things others don't? Yeah, Asushunamir is the shining example of that because this son of a gun was fine.
With a capital fine.
You have to understand that this divine gender bender was so beautiful that nobody and nothing could resist them. No matter the gender or orientation, everybody was guaranteed to thirst after the irresistible Asushunamir, and that's really why Asushunamir was sent to bring the goddess of sexy back. Since my dem was so irresistible, Asushunamir could just stroll into the underworld like it's nothing. Guardians? What guardians? Asushunamir only knew them as simps. Dangerous underworld monsters? What are you talking about? You mean the horny furries? Asushunamir was King, Queen, Riz themselves, and just walked all the way up to the queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal, and said, "How you doing?" And once Ereshkigal laid eyes on them, she was like...
You pick up your palette knife and then work that into meat. Give your meat a good old rub.
And remember, Inanna was here in the underworld, so stiffies and wetlands existed in the dirty south. Ereshkigal must have felt a certain way seeing the beautiful Asushunamir, and every word he said was like a flick of the bean. Ecstasy. She could not resist the demands of such a beautiful being, so when they asked her if they could see the goddess Inanna, whom they had heard so much about, Ereshkigal told Asushunamir, "Sure, right this way, Asushunamir, wanna bite your cheeks." What? So Asushunamir visited Inanna in the underworld and sprinkled some divine, reviving waters of life on the goddess, and the goddess came back to life like that water was crack or something, and together they walked on out of the underworld back to the life of the living, where sex was now back on the menu. But, and this is a big round perfect butt like Asushunamir probably had, but as they made their way out of the underworld, Ereshkigal and her guardians maybe couldn't stop them because Asushunamir was just too beautiful to resist and they just had to let him pass. But what Ereshkigal could do was curse Asushunamir for his treachery, for his lies, no matter how much she desired the silver tongue that had spoken them. So the queen of the underworld cursed Asushunamir that they and all non-binary people to come will forever be viewed with suspicion and experience social rejection. And that's why they struggle to this day.
To this day!
But another Asushunamir shaped, but the rescued goddess Inanna felt horribly guilty about this, and while she couldn't lift Ereshkigal's curse, she blessed Asushunamir and promised that they and all like them will forever be sacred to the goddess Inanna. And the historic texts did prove that androgynous and intersex people were commonly followers and priests of Inanna. And if you've been paying close attention, you might remember something that I mentioned earlier.
A soul for a soul.
Yeah, someone still had to take Inanna's place in the underworld, and once Inanna returned to the living to be reunited with her lover, she found Dumuzi parting it up hard. Man was not mooning her at all. How could he, when he was too busy doing lines off of divine stripper booties? Inanna was mad pissed. She had risked her life for this sorry sob. So she summoned demons to drag Dumuzi back down to the underworld, where he rotted forever.
Forever, ever?
No, it wasn't forever, ever, because there was another problem. You see, Dumuzi, he was Inanna's lover for a reason. Why she is the goddess of human fertility, he is the god of vegetational fertility. Without him, there was no agriculture, and all vegetation was dying and the world was starving. Luckily though, his sister, Inanna, the goddess of dreams, sacrifice and loyalty, volunteered to take his place in the underworld for half of the cycle. And that's how the agricultural cycle was born. When Dumuzi is in the underworld, crops die, and when Inanna takes his place and he returns, everything blooms. Greek mythology later plagiarized this and turned it into a story of Persephone and Demeter. I could talk forever about similarities between Sumerian / Akkadian and Greek mythology. For now, to end this video, only one Greek connection matters, that of the goddess Inanna, non-binaries, and Aphrodite, which leads us to So the Greek equivalent of Inanna is Aphrodite. Really, the Greeks just took Inanna, gave her a different name. Aphrodite is the goddess of love, beauty, and pleasure. She's also the wife of Hephaestus, but you can't keep a good Tatiana down, so she cheated on him with his brother Ares, cheated on Ares with his and Hephaestus' half-brother Hermes, and their uncle Poseidon.
Damn.
But Hermes is the important one here, because Aphrodite and Hermes then had a child that they didn't even try to keep a secret because they called it Hermaphroditus. I don't know why, but I would imagine one of them probably said, hey, let's put our names together to come up with something stupid, like how Kevin and Maria makes Kivria, or Stephen and Helen makes Stephen, wait. So Hermaphroditus it was, and the child was actually born a boy that grew up to be a man that was so ridiculously beautiful that his milkshake brought all the girls to the yard. You know what I'm saying? Man had the pimp juice locked and loaded. You catch my drift? Like, my guy was beauty up north and no beast down south. You know what I'm talking about?
You know what it is, right?
So a nymph fell madly in love with him. Not the cute kind of, oh, he's so pretty that I don't know how to talk to him, how to tell him that I love him. Not that madly in love, nah, she fell madly in love with him with an emphasis on the mad. Man, girlfriend jumped the guy, hugged and grabbed onto Hermaphroditus so hard that BJJ black belts are still studying it to this day, and then screamed to the heavens that the gods should please make her and Hermaphroditus forever one. And the gods were like, hey, how about we take that literally? And they fused the nymph and Hermaphroditus into one being, meaning that now Hermaphroditus had two genders. From then on, the beautiful Hermaphroditus became a symbol for fertility, the unity of dualities, and was often invoked in rituals of eroticism and transformation. In short, Hermaphroditus was special. In all of ancient Greece, people with two genders were the bee's knees, and they were so desired, celebrated, and popular that they were even featured on pots and plates. which doesn't sound that cool now, but pots and plates were like the Madison Square Garden billboards of ancient Greece. And that's the story of the two non-binary deities that date back millennia. But I have to note a couple of things in this video. Sumerian and Akkadian mythology are a mess because they're so old and were retold over such a long time. It's a mess. Sumerian mythology came first, then Akkadian absorbed it and changed the names, but has like spin-offs of each myth. It's really hard to find a red thread for any character's story. So Inanna, for example, in the Sumerian version, she goes to the underworld to conquer it, but in the Akkadian version, her name is Ishtar, and she goes to save her lover, whose Akkadian name is actually Tammuz, not Dumuzi. And Asushunamir, he doesn't even have a name in the Sumerian myth. He's just a nameless hero. Think of it like several writers writing Batman stories. The core is the same, but the execution differs. Personally, I just try to find the most entertaining version that I can get away with, because constantly pointing out the differences between the mythologies or time eras or regions and tripping over every gap in the story, that would zap the pace and fun out of the video. And there are enough historians that obsess over these details. But while we're already on the topic, one thing. In the OG Greek mythology, Hermaphroditus is just born as an androgynous being. It was the Roman writer Ovid who later added the law of grace, nymph, to the story, since the ancient Romans basically adapted Greek mythology similarly to the Akkadians adapting the Sumerian mythology, which in turn then was adapted into Greek mythology that was then, as I said, rewritten by the Romans. It's all one motion, it's all water.
Be water, my friend.
And that's the end of the video. My mission, as always, is just to give you an easy gateway into these magical but often overly complex and ancient stories. I hope I managed to make it simple and fun. If you think I did, you know the drill. Make sure you tick all notifications too, otherwise it won't really notify you next Sunday when I drop my next video. See you then.